Jeremiah Langhorne was integral to the beginnings of free African Americans in Bucks County. Mr. Langhorne was a land speculator and justice in the PA court system. In 1742, upon his death, he had decreed that his slaves would be freed. They would have paid housing, goods, livestock, and equipment. He set them up as free people with life rights. The area in which they settled was called Guineatown. The area called Washington Village dates back to the earliest purchases by African Americans in the 1830s. The establishment of these free towns in Pennsylvania led to the development of the Underground Railroad. A lot of those slaves who had used the Underground Railroad had destinations further north, but decided to settle in these free towns. Let's meet some of their descendants. Let's meet our hidden figures.
I was born and raised in Langhorne. I've been in Langhorne since 1943. This house here is one of the houses that my older sister lived in back in the 50s. And I was raised on this street, and my family has lived here for 100 years almost. I was christened in that BethelAME Church. My children were raised here, raised in that church, and I was also married in that church. This is a nice town. I love it. It's just like a little Mayberry. Everybody loves everybody. Everybody gets along fine. And it's just good to be back in town and see that they're doing something with it again.
I used to live on Pine Street, which is that house behind us. One Christmas Eve, when we were about 7 years old, the house next door caught on fire. So we had to run down and we lost our house. Now, the lady, Mrs. Bradford, which is across the street, took us in for that night so we could get our Christmas stuff. Now, we got split up. Half went to my grandmom's down in Green Street, and half went to my mom up here, grandmom's.
I lived here in Bucks County all of my life, 88 years, and very happily. Happy childhood, happy adulthood, raised 5 children here, and it's been great. Langhorne is a beautiful place to live, and Bucks County is also. So my family is started here in 1850. The 1850 census is the first one that shows members of the household. Prior to that, only the head of the household was listed with the number of people in the household, but no names. The 1850 census for Middletown, the Backman, he has a wife, a number of kids, and a number of non-family members who lived and worked on the farm or in the house. All of them are listed as white except a 30-year-old woman named Hannah Miller, race black, and her daughter, Jane Miller, race mulatto. It seems that the census back then used the term mulatto for mixed race. So if Hannah Miller is black and her daughter Jane is mulatto, the father must be white. I'm not related to the Buckmans as far as I know, but my mother and my ancestors on the nearby farms. The 1880 census for Middletown shows that Jane Brown, her husband William Brown, her children including son John Henry Brown, age 2, and her mother Hannah Miller. So Jane Miller married William Brown. Marriage records for 1904 shows John Henry Brown marries Anna Allen, daughter of Frank and Anna Allen. Census records for 1910 to 1940 shows John Henry and Anna Brown living on Green Street in Langhorne with their children, including Paul and Bernard, my mother Eleanor, Eugene, and that was their family. I lived on the same street, Green Street, till I was about 25 years old. Then I moved up around the corner. My husband and I built a house on Richardson, and I've been there ever since. The 1940 census also shows Jane Brown, age 92, living next to the Brown family on Green Street. That was my great-grandmother. This This Hannah Miller was a slave in Langhorne back in the 1800s, and her daughter, Jane Miller Brown, was the conceived child by the slave, the ex-slave, and the white person in Langhorne. So that made her the half-white child that they're not listing as a color. So Jane Brown was my grandfather's mother, and my grandfather, so that made her my great-grandmother, and Hannah is my great-grandmother. So my two greats-grandmother. So our family dates back into the 1850s, and so my grandfather lived here. He died at 92, so he lived here about till he was 89, and then for health reasons he had to move, and he went into a nursing home. So our family has been here since the 1800s, and so my children, I have 5 children, and so this is their great-great-great-grandmother, who was the ex-slave, and then my grandfather was their great-great-grandfather, and so that's how our family is related to this town and this county in Pennsylvania.
They first came to Bucks County probably in about 1940, 41. I was probably about 6 years old at the time. And this seemed to be a good area for us. And First Baptist was a drawing card for my parents. And once we started attending First Baptist, we joined there.
Hi, we're at BethelAME Church in Langhorne here, African Methodist Episcopal Church. And this is our pastor, Reverend Dr. Tiffany Malone. And we're going to tell you a little bit about our history. Our history is from 1809. We were a mission church. And this is the building where we're standing here was a log cabin, and the log cabin progressed in 1851 into a stone building, and so now it's later on came the main sanctuary in 1922, and since then a lot has happened at this location. So we also belong to the Underground Railroad, and the Underground Railroad, it was 2 leagues that we belonged to. A lot of slaves used to come through here to be taught in this little room, and we have a lot of proof.
So, and these records too also show about the Sunday school, and there's some of these people as over 90 years old. And some of these records go back to 1879.
The Quakers had a lot to do with it too. They actually owned this property in 1817. It was deeded. We had our own property. So we're very proud of that. And so it, like I said, it has a lot of history. The church didn't have anywhere to put the main sanctuary, and they put it on top of the graveyard. And if you go down there, you can actually see the tombs.
Hello, State Representative Frank Ferry here, representing the 142nd District, which covers Langhorne Borough and Middletown Township. I'm honored to be a part of this program today, talking a little bit about the history of the African American community here within Langhorne. As somebody who was born and raised in the community and attended Oliver Heckman School, which is now closed unfortunately, but it's just to my left, I have to say that I got to go to school with many members of the African American community that have been here for generations and generations. You know, I think of the names Jacobs and Derry and Horton, people that are still part of the community now. Going to school in this community and having the opportunity to meet these people that ultimately became friends and learning of the great and deep, rich cultural history here, I think is something that's important. And I think it's important that we carry that message on to the future generations. I also serve as the fire chief of the Langhorne Middletown Fire Company here. And when I joined the fire department, Vern Jacobs was done his term as chief, but Vern Jacobs had been chief of the fire department. And you had an African American in the Langhorne community who was chief of the volunteer fire company, which was a pretty monumentous occasion. Vern was a good stalwart for the fire service. He trained many of the men and women that are still fighting fires right here in Langhorne today, and we were honored to have his insight. So I want to thank the Bucks County African American Historical Museum for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this program today, and I look forward to continuing to support programs such as this moving forward.